Here on our feedback, we're interested in, or in this discussion, we're interested in what you thought of this project as far as a usefulness for your program. We're curious what you think your students would think about this project, or even just an aspect of this project. Will some of this be useful to you? That sort of questioning. So we're probably just going to cycle through everybody. That way we get some feedback from everybody. So let's start us off with Robert McNabb, please.
Okay, Al, I'm kind of multitasking. My other meeting is just starting, and I was filling out the survey. And what is the main question again, Robert? Since the speakers are very low, I can't get them louder. So what do you think? What did you think about this project? What is going to be useful to you, and what do you think your students will think of it? What was the most useful to me was the initial setup of a VAV box. I've not been through that on the non-pneumatic side before. So the hardware portion of it was extremely useful to me personally, but also being introduced to how that one platform works over, or one software works over two different platforms. So you have Sedona for EGIO and Sedona for contemporary controls. That allowed me to actually see some differences between the two, even though I'm still a novice on both. I was able to see some subtle differences between the two as far as block item program, and also I got my baptism by fire for line item coding for CompuTrolls, which that's still a process ongoing, but at least I got to go into its software points and rummage around. So what the takeaways for that are is that now I have an initial platform for my curriculum for the summer, because that's what these students are going to be doing. They're going to be building a trainer. Fantastic. Just-in-time management. Gotta love it. I'm afraid I apologize for being rude, but I'm going to have to step away. Not at all. That was about the perfect amount of time, so that's fantastic. We're glad that it's going to be useful for you. Billy Weaver.
Well, I just like to thank you for the BAS Center, and to Michael. Really, he was. I hadn't gone through this for 2 years, and just writing the program with him, and him taking me step by step on how to do the certain features and the loops and the language was awesome, and it kind of made sense what going through it in a small setting versus a whole big old classroom, and kind of having that one-on-one. And what you were saying earlier is learning the new language, and it really is learning the language and understanding what the blocks do. And after that, you know, if you know the technical side, it just helps tremendously, because you know the way it works. It's just write it in that language that's new. So I think I had the aha moment the last 10 minutes of today. So it was a good breakthrough, and definitely with your help, I think here towards the end of this semester, our students in advanced controls and in commercial air conditioning is where we're going to be introducing this program.
Fantastic. Well, thank you. And speaking of Michael Laster, Michael.
Hey, everybody. Yeah, I think the biggest takeaway I'm getting from this is I have been looking for a controller to install in the VAVs that I have in my lab. The VAVs in my lab have trained controllers in them, and they're proprietary, so there's really not anything I can do with them without the software to access them. And so when the workshop came up to use the EGIO VAV controllers, I was able to get purchasing of some of the VAV controllers to put in these units, and this has been a big step forward in being able to get these VAV boxes up and working and usable and programmable for the students. So, thanks a lot for everything that BAS Center does and is done for us and for our program.
Thank you, Michael. Andy? As soon as he gets unmuted and finds his microphone. Still on mute, man. We'll come back to you, Andy. Robin.
Wait,
He's here. Sorry. Go ahead, Andy.
is it good?
We
Okay.
can hear you.
Okay, so like I said, I'm talking for us this time. So because what's wrong? Okay. Anyway, that we ended up, Andy was way ahead of me because I'm still trying to think in terms of the block programming and all the new stuff we got out of that. And so I have more of a student's view of it, right? Because of all of that. So there is a lot that we're going to be using in the next semester and the semester after that. This experience will spread out into a lot of different sessions for a student. So I think the biggest thing was to get the whole view of it in one big chunk here instead of trying to. So now I know what I have to figure out when I'm writing the courses. Yeah, just being forced to do the block programming. It was good. So anything else?
Thank you. The timing was awesome for this
For
topic
us.
because we're developing the curriculum for this fall, and this is exactly what we're going to inject in it. It's like, all right, there you go.
Yeah, we have all the VAV boxes on both sides here already set up and ready to go. So we just
We
need
missed
to.
one of the stretch goals, but we got the rest of it done, Rob.
Yeah. Okay.
And just because this workshop
Oh
is
no,
going
we
to be
can't
over
hear him.
doesn't mean you've got to stop working on it. So
Here, I got it. I got it. Now we got a speaker back. We didn't hear what you said.
oh, just because the workshop's over today doesn't mean you have to stop working on it by any means. So
Oh, yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah, I have to understand what we did. That's the problem. I'm behind.
Like Robin was saying, if we come back to this wire sheet tomorrow, we'll have no idea what it's from. It's just a pile of spaghetti, and it just needs to. That's part of the learning experience of working with the wire sheet. Organization and trying to compartmentalize. And you mentioned that the other day about putting in folders and stuff, and trying to teach that and teach sequences and subroutines somehow. Trying to organization.
Yeah. So we still have a long way to go, but this was a beautiful start.
Fantastic. Really glad we could help you. And Connie, thank you in particular for pointing out that you're coming at this from a very similar perspective that your students will be. Because so many of us have been doing this for a while, and as everyone knows, when you've been doing something for a while, it may seem very trivial to you in comparison to our students, especially who are just learning this or have a basic grasp on it, and we're trying to work that next step. So that's a really important thing for the rest of us to keep in mind, especially. Robin?
Yeah, I learned everything I learned was new. Everything we went over was new. I'm not quite as grumpy about block coding as I was. Thank you for bearing with my grumpiness, but I did try and bring that same kind of an organization that I use with structured programming. So I'm, even though we don't have a connector, that you can't put a connector in a folder, you can actually put in write floats and write Booleans and bring things in and take them out. So that's what I'm doing in my programming. So I'll use a lot of folders because I don't want to have to, if it won't fit on the screen, I don't want to look at it all at once. I want to try and put it in chunks I can look at and understand. And because I don't have a background in HVAC, I have some background in experience in controls. It was different. In terms of teaching, because I teach something new every semester, from electronic fabrication to Microsoft Office, because I'm the kind of the floater, I find that the first time I teach, it's a little tough. The second time I teach it is the best. And everything after that, I forget what I didn't know. And so I think this idea of having that carte blanche, the Zen mind, beginner mind that's empty, has a real benefit. At least I hope so, because the project that they've given me for the summer is to develop a BAS program. I don't have those nice VAV boxes hanging in the ceiling. We took the VAV box out of our heating system in the lab and put it on the bench. And I'm sorry that I didn't get farther, because we did have a cooler on it, and we actually have a little room. I brought in a hunting blind, and we're putting the duct into the room. So I was going to be able to put the room temperature sensor in there. So sometime before the end of the summer, I'll send out a little video of a demonstration of this, because I hope by then it will be done. But it was really, really a wonderful experience. And Reverend Bob, if I had not gone through that workshop that you had done in 2019 with Contemporary Controls BAS emulator, I would have been in a lot worse shape. And that was incredibly helpful. And I'm hoping, that I'll probably go back and watch a lot of this. And I too want to thank you to do this online at this time. Just amazing. It's really, really impressive. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Robin. Yeah, doing this online was a whole new adventure. Lanny.
So, as my primary role here was more of a mentor to Mario, because he's brand new to this, I'm actually going to let him give the takeaways, because they are going to be much more valuable to you.
Yes, Mario.
So it was very overwhelming for me in a positive way. It was drop you in the deep end, start swimming kind of thing. But I expected so much. I'm fortunate that I had Lanny here to interpret what you guys are throwing words around, and I'm trying to keep up. But I had a lot of fun, and there's a lot to learn, and I'm kind of excited and eager to keep learning this stuff and digesting it and improving. So I want to see our program grow, and as I learn more, hopefully I could help Lanny in growing that program, and that way it just benefits everybody. But this was an awesome experience for me. It just motivated me to continue on and hopefully speak the language, throw words around one day like you guys are. But it was fun. So thank you, everybody. I was impressed with all of the knowledge that all of the instructors have, and I picked up some teaching tips that those are, I guess, unexpected things that I'm always looking to see what style that someone is presenting or teaching. So I walked away with some of that, and just on a side note there. But it was great. Good stuff.
We're really over
Okay.
Because I do have one thing I want to add to this. And so, well, actually two things. The first thing is that Mario realizes that he says he's going to help me. Well, he's not just going to help me, because he's going to end up taking this over in about 4 years. So it's all going to be his. So he's just being prepared. But what I do want to say about the workshop is that, we hear that, it was a lot to do, and there was a lot involved, and we got to a point where we all realized that, many of us, everybody here will probably not finish, but we will certainly take away a lot of good information from those parts that we finished. And as long as, those parts were understood and people we're able to comprehend, okay, here I'm building something, part of the VAV, and I'll understand this and how this was put together. But for anybody that's starting out new in this endeavor and is a new faculty, one of the things that I do like about the complexity of this workshop is that it gave them a high expectation that yes, it was a high level, but it also gave them an understanding of this is what you have to work towards, you know. So it really does enforce that this is what I have to work towards to be able to comprehend this and understand it. So that's just my additional comment.
Fantastic. Thank you, Lanny. And
Hey, Robert, can I butt in, because I was in the same group and I could kind of segue to what's going on, if you don't mind.
absolutely, go for it, Carlos.
Okay, so I kind of okay, I set aside my pride and kind of just surrender and say I don't know, and it actually turned out to be pretty good, because I was actually playing the student role, because I don't know, you know, and it was a kind of a complex type of a sequence for someone who doesn't know that much about it. And so that was beneficial to the group, because now they were getting the students' perspective of, you know, of how am I going to approach someone who doesn't know. And so, you know, like I said, you know, you have to kind of set your pride aside when to do that. And then also the other takeaway, and I think, Mario, you can interrupt. I think Mario and I were in the same boat, but maybe I just felt maybe a little bit more comfortable speaking out and saying, I don't know. And so anyways, but the other good thing is that I asked questions, and Lanny was wonderful as far as providing resources, even some tips on Zoom, and also on the things that you would think the other experienced guys know, and they didn't know. And so that was beneficial. So I did learn, you know, how to connect, you know, almost the skeleton, if you will, of how this thing is put together. So that was beneficial. Now I just have to, you know, build on that. And then what I suggest for the future workshop is maybe start off with a more simpler sequence, just like cooling with no reheat, and then we could build on that on day 3 and 4, because if you're starting off with something that's, I know, you know, there's even a more complex than a VAV box. That's just a small piece of the bigger puzzle, if you will. And so that would have been helpful, because then that would have helped me and anyone who's learning to find out where do we find the boxes, and where's, you know, and, you know, how to find them, and, you know, what's their application. Go ahead, you want to jump in, Mario?
Yeah, I was just going to say real quick, I did a lot of not knowing through the whole thing, but you know, Lanny was here to answer questions on the side, and that's why I didn't involve the group or anything, because Lanny kind of took care of that for me. So if you're probably a step above me, but I just had Lanny here to help me out.
So that's some fantastic feedback from you three, and we really appreciate that. You're right. We absolutely did throw everybody into the deep end on this one. And Lanny's observation that this is really kind of the level that we need to be shooting our technicians, or aiming for our technicians, is a very valuable point, because that's part of the major issue with the industry right now, is that we don't have a vast number of technicians at this level. We definitely have some, but we don't have nearly enough. So that having this as a goal, it is really helpful. And the fact that you're able to take away both some content and some teaching tools, and some pedagogical action from this project-based learning, is just absolutely fantastic. That's one of the things that the BAS Center's been a big proponent of for several years, is project-based learning and specifically for our field, because it really fits in so amazingly well as from a teaching exercise. So we're really glad that you're getting both content and some new methodology along with it. So thank you. Brad?
For me personally, like I said at the very beginning, I have never programmed a complete VAV application. So I was thrown in the fire right alongside of everybody else at the very beginning. I realized that if I broke things down into little segments, instead of trying to figure everything out all at one time, things really started coming into play for me. Perspective.
Yeah, that small bite-sized pieces of a major project is one of those critical skill sets that trying to communicate to some students is really challenging. But it's a great way to address problems like this. And I think Brad probably has more to say. It's just that his Zoom is locked up on him. So
yeah, it did. I'm sitting next to him and his locked up and mine didn't. But yes, where you were headed with the bite-sized pieces is exactly what he was saying. When a system locked up and that.
This meeting is being recorded.
I have no idea what happened.
You went into a set hold.
All right. Like I was saying, breaking things down into small bite-sized chunks makes it easier to digest. And if I take anything away, I've been breaking down my learning for my students into smaller chunks. I need to go even smaller. It is better to learn more about a little bit than a little bit about a whole lot. The takeaway from this is to not get across that finish line, but to understand everything you did to get to the point where you're at today.
that's a solid takeaway for sure. Richard, do you have anything to add since you're both in the same lab working on the same project?
Yeah.
All right. Sorry. We don't.
You're on mute, Richard.
Sorry, thank you. Right, I'm switching cameras and sitting next to Brad, we get horrible feedback. But what I'd like to add is, because I didn't enter today with, or this week, I should say, with an expectation of getting horribly better about building automation. That's Brad's part of this program. My goal has always been is how can I better support everybody else around me? And every workshop, I come away learning new ways of teaching, new ways of supporting Brad, fellow instructors across campus, that we have so many of the same difficulties that we often feel isolated and we shouldn't. And that we, as students, hesitate to reach out when we shouldn't, right? We're a great resource and we need to better ourselves on reaching out and asking if people have things already created instead of reproducing the same way.
So I do have two things to comment on that. Actually, one on what Brad and Richard said here, and one on what Carlos, Mario, and Lanny had said. Carlos specifically called out that he put away his pride and he said, I don't know. And I'll be perfectly honest, that's one of the things that I struggle with as an instructor sometimes, is admitting that I don't know, to myself. Once I admit it to myself, I can admit it to anybody else. That's not a problem. But admitting that you don't know something is really the first step in opening the door to really learn about that topic. So that is an exceptionally hard thing for many people to do, but an amazingly useful tool. So I did want to condone him on that comment. And then from Brad Richards, so this punchline came up in a couple of the groups, but not all of them, I don't think. So this particular project is, in its entirety, is kind of a dirty trick to play on you folks, our participants, or if you choose to play it on your students. Because in the real world, almost nobody writes a VAV program. This is something that when you buy a controller from a manufacturer, most of the manufacturers, at least here in North America, have a program pre-written that you get when you buy a VAV controller that handles, you know, all of these basic functions. And we could have actually given that to you right at the beginning. The problem with that, I see your gestures there, Billy, I get you. The problem with doing that is that these programs that are written by the manufacturers are written to cover a wide variety of sequences instead of a very specific sequence. And they're also, in many cases, exceptionally super complicated. And in a lot of cases, because of them trying to cover multiple sequences, they're very over-engineered as well. So when we try and apply the KISS principle, keep it stupidly simple, it really doesn't. They had no idea about that when they wrote those programs. So I did want to put that out there. And if you're angry at me, I totally understand and don't blame you. It was a challenging task, but you learned something. So. Bob Clark.
All right, 3 questions. Again, which ones do I need to answer first? What did I learn from this? I learned, but first I'd like to say, I give a hand up to Robert for throwing everybody in the deep end and having the gall to do it, because that's an important thing, especially with the amount of confusion and chaos that would be directed towards him over the course of the last 4 days. And it's not easy getting people to think a different way. It's a lot of people in this room got to be that student that first got to learn electricity and was trying to figure out what in the hell that even meant. And it's its own thing. And thinking digitally is another world. And the conflict between people that think digitally and people that think electrically, you know, it can get crazy really fast. It happens in all automation, PLCs, building automation. But if you just break it down into smaller pieces, you can work through and figure it out. And this is just as much of a learning experience as anything else for everybody. In our group, you know, we had computers crashing. We had, I mean, anything that could happen was going to happen. You know, we had the Michigan boys were, you know, are off to the races the second this morning started, and then playing with commissioning, you know, the rest of the period. So it was absolute utter chaos and trying to wrap your head around it and trying to make sense of it. And thank God it's recorded and we have all that stuff put together. But I think it's a learning experience for anybody to be able to put something together digitally. And once you start taking steps, you can start walking, you can start running. But we got to do stuff like this for BAS. You know, we have to get educators together. But, you know, coming up, we talked about it yesterday, design. You know, we started getting to the point where we talk about a concept, and we'd start following a concept, you know, and it became more mastery and recursive education because it was so complex. So we got away from, you know, that creative education, which from a systems thinking perspective, we got away from that and we went recursive on here, follow how this is kind of working. And this is the way and the reason why, you know, kind of like how we do math, right? And if you don't learn how to think intuitively and what do the blocks mean and why is this happening logically, that's the genius that every teacher needs to come to create in a simple way to deliver to their students so that this type of education can carry strong across the country. So I'm hoping we do more like this. I thought, you know, I thought it was a great success compared to what it could have easily turned into, and everybody went with it. And I don't know, I enjoyed it and looking forward to hearing questions on email or whatever else. Like, Bob, what in the hell were you thinking here? And, you know, I don't know. I'm on an emulator. I can't test it, but I will test this program through Contemporary a different way. But it was a great voyage. So it's great seeing everybody too. I'm just tired of this pandemic, and hopefully we can get together one of these days.
Thank you.
Probably
very much.
best to drag you down, Bob.
What'd you say, Ted? Ted, you're still failing until you send that program to me that you finished and didn't just copy mine in. So you get no slack.
I tried to drag our group down, Bob.
Steve Gooch, sorry.
I thought it was good. I mean, you know, I went over to Green Bay for a few days this week, worked with Jenny, kind of between the two of us, it helped. I know that I am still not very good with BAS. I know that, you know, our group, Bob did a great job of circling back and starting with basic concepts. I could spend more time on basic concepts myself. I like the idea of doing simple programs and working up from there. I also I look forward to when we are in person. That's a big thing, is to be able to physically walk over and say, okay, take a look at this. What did I miss? You know, you know, sharing screens is one thing, but holding your computer up to show the wiring and all that kind of stuff, that gets a little tough too. So, I mean, I thought it was successful. I've got, like I said, in my survey, I've got a ton more to learn, and that's really what this workshop brought out. You know, I was in Omaha 2 years ago, and, you know, that one, you know, it was good. That was my first time exposed to it. The only problem with that one was we were put into a group, and those that were good with programming went and started to program. And those of us that were good with wiring and the mechanical side of it went and did all the wiring and hooked up the damper actuators and things like that. And, you know, and I never got much of a chance to dig into the programming side of it. So by combining what we did this time and what we did 2 years ago, next time, I think that would be a real successful workshop, getting your hands into both sides, getting your hands into everything. So.
Awesome. Thank you, Steve. 2 points I want to address there real quick. One of which you said.
Hey, Robert, you're kind of quiet.
Oh, sorry. I had to stand up. I've been sitting too long. So better, Ted? Awesome. So one of the things I want to address there, Steve, is the fact that you said you're not very good at this building automation stuff yet. And I know there are a lot of folks who feel that way. And there is nothing wrong with that. And I will be perfectly honest to you. I have worked with technicians in the field that are doing this as a paid career who felt that exact same way, or I felt that exact same way about them. So the fact that you aren't comfortable with it, that there's nothing wrong with that. Matter of fact, admitting it is a very strong thing. Again, back to that, I don't know. So don't be discouraged if you're not comfortable with it yet. This whole career field, this whole task takes years and years of experience to get comfortable with it. And even with that, I learn something new in this career field every freaking day. And that's one of the things I absolutely love about it. So you will, if you stick with this, you will continue learning things just again and again, and you'll relearn things you didn't realize you forgot. So LCCC, looks like Matt is the one taking front and center for us. So go for it, Matt.
Sorry, I got to try to figure out how to run both screens at the same time. So it's vacation hour here in Michigan. Guys are out of here for the weekend, so they kind of left me here hanging, which is okay. I really appreciated this workshop being available virtual. I think it's been 4 years since I've had the opportunity to attend one, and that's because 4 years ago I didn't have any kids, and now I have 4. So it was really nice to be able to catch up with folks and attend. About 2006, I did Tritium's AX program while I was still a student. And this took me all the way back there. So we crammed more into a 2-day thing here, 3 days of actually doing the software, as what I paid almost $3,000 for a full week class. This might have even been more fast-paced than that. This was pretty intense. We worked through it. It was good. Really enjoyed it. I know the other guys really enjoyed it. It was nice for us to have 3 guys sitting here in a lab that could work together. So when we had issues, either I started with a bad actuator or I burned up my actuator when I wired it up the first time. We had an airflow issue, airflow not reading. Well, a damper was shut, and all it takes is somebody next to you to be able to point that out to you. So it was nice. We were able to be there. We've been face-to-face doing labs at LCC the whole last year, so fall and spring. But it made that nice. So really appreciate that. I thought everybody did a great job facilitating the virtual environment. It's amazing how we've changed in the last 18 months or whatever when it comes to this type of stuff. The one thing maybe is, and this was a very difficult sequence. Robert's very well aware of that. Maybe some more time with some of the basic blocks, a simple air handler or cabinet unit heater or something. I didn't realize how versatile this controller was going to be until we started working with it. Moving forward, our transition to virtual has freed up. I teach 2 of our HVAC electrical classes, and it's freed up some things we used to do we can't do anymore, or we're just coming up with a different way to do them. And so we're looking to add some content to those electrical classes, and we've all in agreement that we're going to be adding something related to building automation. And so a controller like what we were exposed to today is so much simpler to set up and work with, that I think we can, fit a brief overview into a couple weeks with students. So that's one of the projects I'm gonna be working on this summer. But I'm probably gonna go simpler with like a cabinet unit heater application or something like that. So it took away some really great things, really appreciate it.
Fantastic. One suggestion I would offer is go maybe a little more complex than your cabinet unit heater. I see you've got residential furnaces right behind you. Have them replace the thermostat and use a controller for it.
So those are actually air-to-air heat pumps. Our residential lab is across the road. We got about 45 furnaces over there. But yeah, that's basically what I would be getting to is, it's like, we've got trainer furnaces that they start working on in the electrical class. And they do a lot of basic wiring and basic troubleshooting with. And so I was thinking some type of, controller that could be mounted on a board that you could use in place of the thermostat for the furnace or something like that.
Fantastic. And it will help them understand how a thermostat actually works in the process. So,
Because that thing we were working with the last few days was actually called a room sensor, not a thermostat, right?
correct.
Did you hear that, Bob?
All right. Thank you, Matt. I'm sorry your compatriots bailed on you, but thank you for being here for us. So, Jenny.
I learned a ton again at this BAS workshop. I'm just sitting here nodding. I guess I don't have a ton more to add to a lot of people's comments. I kind of agree that this was super complicated. And I would have loved to start with kind of more of a basic logic to work with. But in terms of what I can do with this, once I have this up, running, I'm going to use this as a demonstration. You know, my students so far, we've kind of been working with like a BAS Pi and just doing something simple with that. And I think I could probably just use this as an example of where we go with the technology from there. In this program, students have to basically learn to be more of a consultant and how to recommend energy efficiency measures. So this really helps my students learn how to recommend things that will actually work, what this looks like on that end, what components are involved. And then maybe some things that people haven't mentioned is we use a lot of reference data, you know, looking at the airflow charts and things that went into the logic. I think those were good exercises that we certainly apply in our classes as well. But yeah, I agree. 4 kids, Matt, in 4 years. You're gonna have a good Father's Day. And I agree, it's a room temperature sensor, Bob. So anyways, it's always good to meet with you guys, and I learned so much. Thank you.
All haters. You're all haters.
Well, thanks, Bob. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Jenny. I do want to address one other comment. Actually, this goes back to Matt and what Steve put into the chat about other exercises or about other sources for programming training for building automation. And that's realistically why we are here, is because unless your community college is doing it, nobody really is. You can go to any of the control manufacturer's certifications and they will teach you how to use their tool. They will not teach you good programming practices. They will not teach you anything about building automation systems, well, about HVAC systems, climate controls. They will teach you how to use your system. And they will charge, as Matt pointed out, they will charge you an arm and a leg to be certified to work on their system, whether they're charging you as an individual or your company, even if your company is a partner of theirs, unless it's internal like Siemens or Johnson does for their corporate branches, it's expensive in just for to send somebody to the course, not to count the fact that most of these courses are not close to where most people live when we're looking at it from a country standpoint. And the hoteling, the transportation, food, the wages to send somebody to these. So that's one of those things to keep in mind. So, Don Crawshaw.
Yes. I learned a lot. I'm still behind, but in the past, the work I had done out when I was in the field, energy management stuff, all the programs were already in the controllers. All I had to do is land the input and outputs. That's really opened my eyes, but also gave me a good opportunity to get this new trainer. When I told my associate dean, I need this for this workshop and I'm going to use it as trainer, I got the money. So, except, so Bob, They did send me a thermostat, not a room sensor. So I couldn't use it the way we're using it. So I found a old duct sensor and tied it in for my zone sensor.
Fantastic. Thank you, Don. And way to be inventive with troubleshooting on the fly and finding a sensor that would work for you. So, Hadley.
Okay, I had never done anything with Sedona. I had that Tritium AX training some years ago also, but it was so long ago that not having a chance to use it, I forgot most of it. So this was a really big plus for me to get my hands in Sedona and understand, well, not my hands in it, but to kind of understand a bit more what that environment is all about. Most of the recent stuff I've done has been Icon with AOC. And it's nice to kind of contrast the differences between that system and Sedona. But even more important than that, I think our group dynamics were fantastic. I'm not really sure how I landed with that bunch of people, but it was virtually perfect. The different strengths and weaknesses that we brought to that group, and the discussion and the diversions to other issues. I mean, the whole thing was absolutely fantastic. I wish Bob had been there. He might have learned something for a change. It was an absolutely fantastic group. And I think that's one of the things about these Best Center Institutes or workshops is bringing people together of like mind to have these kinds of discussions in a learning environment. And that's maybe the biggest thing that I'm taking away from this exercise. The last thing I'd like to say, though, is that, and those of you that, and probably not a lot of you, but those of you that have dealt with me a bit more would understand what I'm about to say. DDC to me is an abstraction. In most cases, the issue that we're dealing with is HVAC here. And HVAC control, doing it appropriately, and that is really the focus of what we're trying to do. I believe the industry as a whole has a problem with abstracting what we're trying to do back to ones and zeros and X's and O's and you know, trying to focus too much on the computer and the program. What we're trying to do is HVAC. So in that context, I think what I'd like to see in the future is more kind of upfront discussion, if you will, in this case about VV boxes and how they work and what they do and what they're intended to do and how they fit into a system. I think with that kind of discussion, some of the questions and answers in the actual programming might be put in better perspective. And to kind of end this, whatever Robin is doing, this idea of using a duct blind as a room, as a load, I think is an absolutely fantastic idea. And I would like to follow up once you get that thing set up on how well you get the part of the system that we haven't talked about, the mechanical feedback. Once that's worked into this whole equation to see just how much more realistic this can be. I really enjoyed these 3 or 4 days. Looking forward to doing it again. And thank you, Robert, for putting this together. I know what kind of stress you can go through getting this together. You did a great job. Thank you. Even with Bob making offhand comments half the time, you did a great job.
Well, what would a Best Center meeting be without Bob making comments? I mean, really. Thank you, Hadley, for all the feedback. And I absolutely agree with you. Robin's idea of using that duct blind for that actual room feedback is phenomenal. Just a really great, simple idea.
Yeah, Hadley's actually trying to use a pre-made plastic box.
Yes, it's a 1 cubic foot plastic box and whatever. Yeah.
As long as no ducks are killed in the use.
Ducks or ducts? All right, Steve
Quack,
May.
quack.
So the big takeaway I have of this is the actual mock-up itself. Besides having our tab team try to get all the parts for us, and they did a great job getting it to us 2 days late, and but it still worked out great getting all the parts. Now after doing this, it's almost as if we're going to take all the parts that we have and move them into different mock-ups, which makes it even better. What I think is going to help the students the most is as we're going through some of the classes, some of the discussions, I was also kind of brainstorming how can we use this mock-up for other parts of our program besides the controls class. So things such as looking at it through building codes, as Headley was saying, the science and the components that we're actually trying to teach the students and how they interact with the controls. And finally, the energy audits and analysis class of mine. We have all the systems here. How do you write a functional performance test for this? If you don't have a control system, where do you put the your data loggers? So while this was great for the control side of it, I'm really looking forward to how this helps all the other courses that we have. And that's all I got.
Fantastic. Thank you, Steve. And I obviously circled through all the rooms over the course of things. And I'll tell you what, seeing some of Steve's presentation of the code that he wrote for this, he and I think very much alike. So I think that's at least partially a living in the field, doing it type experience as a result. So
thank you very much.
Frank Rutt.
Hey, so I have, I want to thank, first of all, Robin and Mike for having me at their school. Since our system is not yet electrified yet, but doesn't mean we can pull it apart, which I can't pull it apart, which I learned from Robin. We ripped apart a VAV box from the ceiling and hooked it up to all this stuff, even in a hunting tent. So that was interesting. But what my perspective, which is probably a little bit different than everyone else. I've been recently working through a lot of our coursework and our curriculum and training people and running it through industry. A lot of the universities in Boston, Northeastern, Tufts, UMass, their facilities management departments, because I want those people to hire our students. So I view it through their eyes, and they send us a lot of different people. They send us like janitorial types and sometimes PhDs. So we have to always make sure the janitorial types don't drop out, because they always want to drop out immediately, and the PhDs don't get bored. So that's always a challenge. So for me, this portability, granularity concept is really important. And granularity of understanding the whole thing, which you guys do very good. Why are we using this system, EasyIO, and what are the other systems, and how does it compare, and just why are we doing things this way? So that's you guys do that really well, and I think that's really important. What are the system's limitations? Maybe we do that a little bit too much, because we were working with a lot of a couple MIT students, and if I look at this project through their eyes, they would say, "Oh my God, they're 10 years behind, and the system's kind of kludgy with all these little things that you have to do, and there's this freeware software, and I would think, through their eyes, this industry is ripe for disruption, And so I look at it through that. But I think the big takeaway is the portability thing. Once we take the VAV box off the unit and put it on, you start building, I was fortunate to be with Robin and Mike, and they built this little stand, and everything was perfectly aligned. And once you do that, and the wiring, you just learn it. That tacit knowledge is so important. And I think, once it's the big picture and the tacit knowledge, then it's portable. You never lose that. It's like riding a bike. And I think that's the most important thing. And I would love to see every student do that, what we did today. And even though we're doing it in groups, just have those parts and get the part delivered to them, look at the box and what is this? And then put it all together. And it's, when we go through these workshops, like an epiphany, in fact, Robin had this light on on his unit. I said, every time I get epiphany, I'm gonna kick you and you turn on the light. And, you know, that happened quite a few times because I think those two things are very important. The granularity of understanding of the big picture and the tacit knowledge of putting everything together from the box. So that's something we're going to attempt to use a lot going forward, and it's a good thing. So I thank you guys for all your hard work.
Thank you, Frank. Rafat, and if you feel like it, you can let Ted talk too.
We both stand here. Okay. Thank you. It's always a pleasure to attend these workshops with you guys. I think I do learn a lot, and I hope that we will be able to, and looking forward to take whatever knowledge that I gain to pass it to my students, hopefully once I teach the APS class in the spring. Thank you.
My takeaways from this were just reinforcements of what a lot of you already said. And, you know, Bob kept trying to take us back to the basics and understanding what we're trying to accomplish rather than focusing on the actual programming of this. And that's probably oversimplifying what he's doing, but he wanted, and which I think all of us as instructors want our students to do, is to think about how these things really work and why we need to do them in certain ways. And if you don't have that basic understanding of it, it's hard to do the programming. Because if you're just doing the programming, you're just plugging numbers in, doing things. Well, anytime you hit anything that's slightly out of the normal, you're going to fail like trying to accomplish anything. So that was one takeaway I had. And again, just like everybody else, there's so many things that I was able to grab onto and learn through this process. The other thing for the future, I think, you know, the BEST Center as a whole, we got to think about how to bring in those basics while still throwing in a really complex situation. The complex really, I think, drove us to learn a lot more during these couple of days. That's really important. So maybe the part about the basics is that we can walk away from this lesson and then apply some of the more basic concepts in smaller chunks that we can have for our students. That would be helpful. So maybe that's one thing we need to try to do, is to break it out a little bit more so that it's easier to do that. That's it.
Fantastic. Thank you for that feedback, Rafat and Ted. Thank you. Stephen Chow. I know you were just an observer for this one, but what's your takeaways?
Hey guys, I learned a lot. I'm at home currently taking care of my mom because she's sick, but I learned quite a bit. I'm gonna try to implement that in my class, in my refrigeration air conditioning class, and try to see if I can instill on the students what you folks instilled on me. I really enjoyed the content, and also Robert, his knowledge and his experiences and how to look outside of the box. I hope to see you folks in Las Vegas in the ESCO Institute. But I did come away with a lot of experiences. Thank you.
Thank you for taking the time to join us. Ivory.
Yes, sir.
What are your takeaways? I know, again, you were just an observer because your parts didn't come in as anticipated. So
I really really enjoyed it, especially working with Mike. I was able to follow along with his structure of a VAV box program. I don't know, it's been 20 years or so since I've worked with VAV boxes.
from, I guess, 92 to about 2002. I worked with them, but it was from a different perspective. My experience with VAV boxes was basically going in and trying to figure out the programming. Primarily because they were transitioning from pneumatics during that time period to DDC. I mean, we learned pneumatics relatively easy, but then we go to DDC and you plug in a computer and you have the VAV box, and trying to figure out the programming for that was really difficult without having the experience with the program from a programming perspective. But this made me aware. I mean, gave me a lot of insight. They're close to completing our lab, and we'll have the VAV system. Well, the entire system is being installed, so we'll be able to implement a lot of this. And I plan to get the material to use to train the students on. So I've obtained a lot from just observing this, and hopefully next time I'll be in a position to more actively participate, because of the programming is interesting.
Fantastic.
But I enjoyed it. As usual, I enjoy being in the mix of you guys here at BAS. And when that happens, that I am able to take away a significant amount from it. And I want to thank you all.
Thank you for taking the time
Thanks
to join
very
us.
much.
I'm sorry that your hardware didn't show up to be quite as useful as you would have liked at this time, but hey, you've got it coming. You got the work headed for you, so that's fantastic. Frank Medina.
Hey, Robert, thanks a lot for another great workshop. Thanks to BAS Center for having us. And just like Ivory, we didn't get our controls in on time, but we made the best of it. Thanks, Michael, great team lead. And yeah, great workshop. I burned down my printer, printing out all these guidelines, about 300 pages, but it was worth it. Again, thanks a lot. Great workshop.
Larry.
Oh, is it my turn?
It is.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm sorry that our visitor from ALC could not join us as I had hoped, but we will certainly kind of bring these discussions also to his attention and to that of the NVC when we see them in a few weeks. You know, I sat in on Group 5's, I think it's Group 5's, Andy's breakout room. And we continued to, again, kind of look at the programming and its graphic legibility. And, you know, Robert also confirmed there appears to be no way currently to color code the lines between the blocks or to put, say, a color border around your block to identify, say, heating versus cooling. And that to me seems to be kind of a real kind of, well, oversight, but hopefully an easy fix, right? And a powerful fix. And I would love to hear from other companies using block-based programming about how they improve the legibility and just kind of think about graphic user interface, right? In general. because the more user friendly, the better. And, you know, I also want to put it out there that, you know, though we were not able to get to the functional test this go around, you know, we could certainly consider having a webinar where all of you come back to do that piece. We can also certainly share our setups again, you know, and look at them more closely. And then also, the other thing I want to mention, I don't know that we'll have time today to do this, but if you all would be interested in presenting your programmed sequences, and, you know, we can do kind of show and tell, right? And do a kind of general critique, or, you know, why did you organize your blocks in this folder versus that folder, right? Is there a way you could reduce the number of folders so you don't have to create as many links? I think, you know, that would be useful to do. And as I said, these are things we can look to do in the fall. I'd love to see us do more kind of follow-up webinars, because we have these kind of long gaps between workshops. And I think that doing follow-ups would also help just engage you all and promote that continuity.
Fantastic. Thank you, Larry. I do want to address one quick thing. There have been a lot of folks who have put some great links in the chat. So if you haven't had a chance to catch those, besides the obvious survey, which everybody should already be addressing, there's some links from Larry about National Science Foundation ATE grants and Mentor Connect. Carlos has shared a link to an online training done by Sunbelt Controls, which is an outfit out of California. And then there's some discussion about notes and things like that within the programming for contemporary controls and EasyIO. Some of the things that you're asking for that Larry brought up, color coding, the ability to add notes and things like that, would really be phenomenal. But that's kind of part of the challenge built into Sedona as a programming framework, because it was originally designed for very low power, small operations. When it was originally designed, it was kind of more targeting that early Arduino type market as far as its hardware capability, which is much smaller than what contemporary controls and EasyIO and just about everybody else has taken it and run with it. So that's where some of those initial limitations come from, is from the fact that the Sedona programming language is 16 years old now, I think. So it's getting a little bit long in the tooth, so to speak, without many people updating the core Sedona. So hopefully some people will take up that flag here soon and give us a newer version. Peter.
Oh, let's see. We missed Don, I think, Robert.
Don Crawshaw?
Yeah.
No, Don spoke.
Oh, did he? From Utah?
Yep.
Okay. Wow. Well, I found all of this fascinating. And one thing about doing this virtually is it allows a much more intimate discussion, which I found very helpful. You know, we did know we were throwing people into the deep end, but it is part of our immersive technique. And people really stepped up. And I want to appreciate the mentors and the mentors within the mentors as well. I think the results were quite good. We haven't heard too much. Well, we actually did hear some about the methodology as pedagogy and how people will use this in the classroom, starting with the smaller scale and working up. Also, I was fascinated by Lanny's comments about block programming and its usefulness for people who are visual learners and tactile learners as well. So I think that was a really important insight. And I think there's more and more realization that using a license-free software is very, very helpful in the long run, even though we still have our other programs and vendors in our labs. Having this option is really good. I didn't hear too much about the difference between EasyIO and Contemporary and how that played out within the groups, maybe within the Upper Midwest group. They seem to work together pretty well, regardless. It just, for me, it's just amazing to have the amount of talent and knowledge and skills that are represented in the BEST Center network, working together around a common cause and learning together and sharing. It's just an incredible experience. And thank you so much, Robert, for your work on this. I know you're going to take a long rest until class on Monday, right?
Tuesday, but yeah.
Yeah. But it's really good to see everyone, hear from everyone, get everyone's insights, and have everyone engaged in learning together.
Yeah. I'd like to echo Peter's thank you to our mentors. And again, the mentors within the mentor groups. You folks were fantastic. We absolutely could not have succeeded with this workshop without you. We might have attempted it, but it really would have been a very different workshop and would definitely have been leaning very hard towards that disaster end of the spectrum. So thank you very much for doing that.